1, 2, 3, 4.
Bonjour à tous, au nom de notre président Rudolf Hidalgo qui est avec nous, qui a des petits soucis de connexion mais qui nous rejoint lorsqu'il le souhaite. Un bonjour, bon matin et un bonsoir en particulier à Madame Hollands, directrice de l'Institut australien des études sur les familles, qui nous fait aujourd'hui l'honneur.
Hello, on behalf of our President Rudolf Hidalgo, who is experiencing some connection issues, but will be with us shortly. I would like to welcome you on his behalf, the delegate who is with us. It is 10 p.m. in Australia. Welcome to the association. Very pleased to have you here for back to school. This is always something, an important moment for us, especially in the current context, of course, of the COVID pandemic. And in fact, the choices to be made between social investments together. It is important we mobilize to work together. Let's carry on together on this journey, the WebCampus journey. Today in Australia, we are working on acting together in a common language. We will have the opportunity to have high-level speakers, specialists with us today. It is important, in fact, to welcome and listen to podcasts. This is important, especially given the current context. It is now available in the International Village. It is keeping important for us to work together as an association, to work at all levels, internationally, nationally, locally, and with municipalities. It is all about educating, supporting, and to do so with an open heart, kindness in education. To conclude, I would suggest that we watch this short video that you'll find in the French version as well. This will be in English right now. This translates about how the association positions itself on a daily basis in light of the motto to share knowledge at an international level. Thank you very much to Mr. Hidalgo, who shared his text with me. We will watch this video in order to kick off this meeting. Thank you very much.
To our children that we entrust the world of tomorrow. We are all actors of the educational community, so we are all concerned. Moving in harmony is essential to maintain balance, stable on both legs. These two pillars, making progress together at their own pace, it's our DNA. In reference to our international, European and national advocacy, acting early is the key to equal opportunities. Sharing up-to-date scientific knowledge on child development is our right leg that moves forward and brings the left one ahead. Acting on the ground, especially for the most vulnerable people, is critical to enrich educational practices and relationships with families. These actions and the learnings are our left leg that in turn brings the right one ahead. Early childhood professionals are committed and innovative on a daily basis. They are an essential part of our society. Our mission is to support them in their practices and to promote quality. So let us all build together with the children a better world with greater solidarity.
Hello, bonjour everybody. This is Yuri Belfali of the OECD. Today, I'm very pleased to be part of the third session of this event, and it's a great honor for me and for the OECD to work with Ensemble pour l'éducation de la petite enfance. For the first and second sessions, we have covered discussions focusing on policy issues and macro environment of early childhood. Today, we would like to propose everybody to think about what we can concretely do to make an impact and what actions we have to make, and around what common languages we can build our partnership and common actions. So I am very much looking forward to listening to four speakers, and also the exchange through Q&A sessions, and come up with great ideas that we can pursue in the coming years to make a difference. Today, I'm also pleased to co-facilitate this session with Natalie. So you will hear both me and Natalie to moderate the sessions. And it's a great honor to have four speakers from different corners of the world today. We have Miss Anne Hollands from Australia. We have Professor George Trabus-Lucy from Canada, Dr. Bernhard Kaliki, Germany, and Mr. Patrick Dumoulin from France. Before opening the session, I also would like to highlight and remind ourselves some important aspects that we shouldn't forget when we discuss the common language and the issue of quality of early childhood education and care. First, as you have seen in the video, is the issue of equity. We are very much ambitious and aiming at achieving the equal opportunity for all young children. But as you know, unfortunately, the opportunity is not equal everywhere in the world. The statistics show that disadvantaged children have less chance than advantaged peers to go to, for example, early childhood education and care institutions. But it's not only about the access to education and care. Recent OECD study, which combined the understanding of what children are actually learning and how they are developing at the age of 5 and how their learning environment looks like, reveals that disadvantaged children are actually very much behind advantaged children in terms of the learning, important capacity for them to prepare for the future learning, such as pre-numeracy, pre-literacy, but also disadvantaged children are already behind other group of children at the age of 5 in terms of social and emotional development, including the notion of trust or the capacity to behave positively for the pro-social environment, or capacity to identify the emotion of others. So this is an important reminder for us that when we talk about the actions, we have to think about how we can, in general, promote the better learning and development of children, but also how we could better support disadvantaged children. During the first two sessions, we have also talked about the quality, and it is also important to look into the process of learning and development of children and how we can ensure the quality in the process. Later, we will expect to hear more from the speakers, but also another recent findings of the OECD study showed that some early childhood education teachers or caregivers are confident in some of the areas to ensure quality process, such as emotional support to children or making children feel secured. They are very much confident in these areas. But many educators in early childhood education care are not confident, for example, in using technologies to support children's learning. whereas this is an important emerging area where any educator cannot overlook. So I hope that we can learn more from 4 speakers about the recent issues and actions that we can learn from 4 countries. And I'm looking forward to an open exchange of ideas later. Before introducing Ms. Anne Holland, Natalie, if you would like to say something, please jump in.
I would like to thank you, Yuri, because OECD is bringing so many publications, very interesting for early childhood teachers and all people on the field, and we must have a look quite every day on your publications. It brings us in the future to adjust our practices. I'd like to thank you and thank you and say thank you to our speakers today. And I think Mrs. Hollands will bring her inputs from Australia, and we are impatient to hear you, Mrs. Hollands. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Yuri. Thank you for this opportunity to share some reflections from Australia. It's very exciting to be part of this international congress, and congratulations to you all for this event that you have arranged. I will focus my comments on one of the questions posed for this session. What is the common language we can all speak? Every child in every family shapes the future of all of our countries. Investment in children is a nation-building investment that builds human potential and breaks intergenerational disadvantage. We know that children do not exist in isolation. Children, by definition, are in a relationship to somebody else, parents or grandparents or carers. Learning and development, especially in the first 1,000 days, occurs in a relationship. The preamble to the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child speaks of the family as the natural environment for raising children. And the convention points out the responsibilities of countries to support families to do this well. A relational view of childhood tells us that child well-being and development is deeply connected to the context and the conditions under which children and their families are living. This includes the social and economic policies and how well these policies are either helping parents to raise their children or not helping them. And of course, early childhood education centres are a hugely important part of the world of the child and her family. By deliberately designing or co-designing their services with families, not just for them, they can warmly invite families in to a shared focus on child well-being and development. By doing this, early childhood education centres can support child well-being and family well-being together, because family matters to the child. Early childhood education is a setting where we can wrap support services around the whole family and shift our investment and effort earlier and upstream, which we know is more effective and less costly in human and economic terms compared to reacting to problems later. I would like to share some insights now from research about how a shared language amongst all of us who are interested in child well-being can make a difference. We know that the families who most need help are the ones who are least likely to get the support they need. When trying to help parents, we as counsellors or educators, we often try to empathise with parents about how hard their job is. We feel that saying it is normal to be struggling with this hard job will encourage parents to reach out for support. But research shows that the opposite of this is true. Normalizing how hard parenting is does not make people want to be better parents. Instead, it makes them feel like it's okay and normal to be struggling. If everyone else is having difficulty, if there is nothing that can be done. This way of doing the job of parenting does not make people think that parenting is something that one can get better at. This negative way of describing parenting also reinforces that raising children is a private matter and not something that the community can or should provide support for. This way of describing parenting does not encourage us in the broader community to see the well-being of all children as our shared responsibility. This kind of language does not motivate us to create change. Instead, we can normalize the things that will help improve the lives of parents and their children. What if we made normal the idea that all parents need and receive support? What if we made normal the idea that parents can get better at parenting? If we describe parenting as something we can all get better at doing, that parenting is a practice that we can all improve, and that it's normal to get help to do this, then even people who are not parents can see the value and the positive outcomes for society of providing support for families. As we know, there's a lot of attention in the media on what parents should or should not be doing. This makes parents feel bad and not supported. We need to shift instead to the language of what do all children need, to the language of child well-being and development. If we shift from judging parents on what they are doing wrong to talking about what all children need and what parents who are supported can provide, this will help to build a common language about creating the conditions which support child well-being. By changing our language, we can build a new conversation about children as our social responsibility rather than just an individual parent's obligation. Thank you.
For children's learning and development, and also an area where we need to further work on to create a common language and share the common language with parents for them to be a capable agent, I would say, to support children, their own children, but also the children of the community. I am also pleased to introduce the second speaker, who is also the expert in this area, Professor George Trabuzzi. George, may I call you George? George is a professor of psychology at Laval University and also director of the University Research Center on Young People and Families, and leading interesting research on the environment and also the development of children's attachment or other emotional development important for their growth. So, George, please go ahead with your intervention.
Bonjour, merci à tout le monde de l'organisation de cette conférence.
Good afternoon. We would like to thank the organizers of this interesting conference. We would like to thank Nathalie, Yuri, and the organization Ensemble pour l'Éducation and the OECD. I would like to address two or three elements that have to do with prevention. Mrs. Holland's we were listening to the stress on the families need and the help they need. And for a bunch of different reasons, what scientists are saying is that the challenge of reaching out to families is a significant hurdle, but it is critical for different reasons. First of all, what we should be saying is that having good intention isn't enough. Wanting to do well isn't enough to actually as well. And luckily, over the last few years, research has been able to show us that how we should be structuring or designing the outreach programs so we can get in touch with these families and can be confident that we have confident outcomes. I'd like to stress a few of these elements. I would like to mention something Mrs. Holland said about the parent-child relationship. We want to meet children's needs. We want to make sure that the development needs are met so they can grow up and make the most of the resources around them. This has to do with biological needs and cognitive, emotional, social needs. All of this has to be met adequately. Research shows that we need to intervene as we can and follow up during the first few days and months of their lives. And usually, speaking of the 1,000 first days from pregnancy throughout early childhood, these are significant. We should even pursue this a little longer. The parent-child relationship is a channel, thanks to which this kind of support can best be expressed. As social workers or social players, if we can provide the support for the parent-child relationship, there are positive outcomes. We have been able to compare the strategies that provided family support and programs that were focusing on the parent-child relationship and interaction. There are huge differences when you are focusing on supporting the parent-child relationship. It favors the child's development. We want to support quality parent-child relationships. We demonstrated the positive outcomes. That has a positive outcome on later developments in children. If you look at all the different issues, for instance, educational outcomes, health, all the childcare services better provided for children who are underprivileged and get state support. Juvenile detention, if you look at all the phenomena, we realize the beginning of the child's life is a major predictor. The parent-childhood relationship is closely linked to all of these expensive phenomena. Economically speaking, the parent-child relationship is fundamental. As I was saying earlier on, we want to support the childhood from prenatal as long as possible. We want this outreach, these programs, to meet the needs, for instance, biological needs. It shows that this can have a programming effect on later child development. It is important to have this kind of approach to families as soon as possible. The program shows that the earlier we intervene and the closer we get to families, the many positive outcomes we get, the more positive outcomes we get. I think it is important because there are many well-intentioned programs that don't have the specific outcomes. I think there is something else that is important. The prevention and intervention strategies need to adjust to the cultural context we are working in. This is no one-size-fits-all. We need programs that are specific to the cultural, ethnic, socio-economic context that we are working in. and making our programs fit to context is fundamental if we hope to be successful. And the second component is the training we provide to our carers with. We know that the more the players are educators, the educators have been trained, the more they know about what they are doing, the more the positive effect is. In Quebec, we work with educators with different backgrounds. We want the educators to stay with us as long as possible. This is fundamental as we want to be successful. The training that is involved, this is very important. Proper training of educators. It is important to act early. It is in order to assist the child as soon as possible in all areas. It is important also to work with children, with families, and to adapt, tailor this to the needs and the situation of the family, but also of the society in question. There is another issue that is important. In the Western world, in Quebec, each of us work in our own corners. People who work in childcare centers, those who work in other areas, daycare centers. They often don't interact, in fact, dealing with the same parents and families. There is no connection. It is important to coordinate, to speak to each other, to make sure that the families feel supported by the various systems they are working with. I think that the idea of really working on preventive programs is important. All the more so, the current contact is so that resources are going to be scarce in light of the current pandemic. That's a fact of life. But the issues of families, of child development, these are very important issues as well. Thank you very much, Professor.
Merci, professeur Talboussi. C'était un bon rappel que la relation parent-enfant est aussi un aspect très important. Heureusement, récemment, le côté relationnel porte plus d'attention, à mon avis, qu'avant dans les discussions de politique de la petite enfance, mais pas encore suffisant. Le fait que peut-être c'est difficile de décrire et difficile d'exprimer la situation de manière objective, mais c'est pour cela que les recherches que vous menez et aussi les autres chercheurs contribuent apportent un élément très important pour enrichir ce domaine. And now I'd like to invite the third speaker, Dr. Bernhard Galicki. He is the head of the Children and Childcare Department at the German Youth Institute. And also he is the pioneer working with 9 countries in OECD to work on the situation and the practice of the early childhood educators. But at the same time, I don't see him yet on the screen. Natalie, can I go ahead with Barney, or shall I introduce Patrick Dumoulin?
Yes, please.
Okay, so while waiting for that part, let me introduce the next speaker, Mr. Patrick Dumoulin, who is the president of the Great Place to Work France. I understand that Patrick has been the pioneer in exploring and supporting to create the joyful and nice place to work and family-sensitive working environment. But I would like to hear more about his initiatives and thinking. So please, Patrick, à vous la parole.
Bonjour à toutes et bonjour à tous. Donc, je ne sais plus si on avait le choix de s'exprimer en français ou en anglais, donc je vais prendre le français. Je suis extrêmement honoré aujourd'hui d'être...
Hello to all. I am not sure if we were allowed to speak in French or English. It seems like we do. I'm honored to be here. Also, an honor for my company, a great place to work. This company is almost 30 years old. We have branches in 60 countries worldwide. I have experience, vast experience. I had the opportunity to work in many companies. I have been working with Great Place to Work for 15 years now. I am very much looking forward to speaking today. I am also pleased to speak right after Mrs. Hollands and Professor Tarabulsi, as they refer to putting the program in context. I'll get back to it later. Needless to say, I fully share this point of view. It is interesting to have a global view of childhood development, and also parenting, and the role of parents. Now, if you look at France, on the one hand, then there was to the left of that Canada, the Canadian friends, and also Australia. We have arrived at a consensus, and we have come to an agreement on different issues. I have also been a parent, about 30 years ago when my first child was born. At the time, I worked in a major French firm, a world leader in its area of work. But at that time, to be a parent and to say that one was about to be a parent was in fact considered an obstacle, as it was important to be, above all, a worker, and therefore the company. Parenthood was seen as an obstacle. In fact, I joined Great Place to Work 15 years ago. That was for a job. And this echoes with what the two previous speakers said, to build a better society by assisting organizations, businesses, to become a great place to work for all. We are looking at organizations both in the public and private sectors. I myself, as a business leader, feel that building a better place for all means that for all, regardless of age, regardless of your origins, it has to be a great place to work. In France, and I'm referring to my Quebec colleague, we are not allowed to refer to ethnicity. When it comes to inclusiveness, diversity, these are important issues, important struggles. These are issues close to our heart at Great Place to Work. And in fact, as soon as the child is born, it is important to intervene. For instance, some countries such as Canada, Denmark, and the UK have evolved. Some countries are in fact behind others when it comes to intervening at the early age, at birth. Some countries such as Germany or Japan, there is a very low birth rate, and these countries have to look at these numbers. It is important for these countries, therefore, to have policies that will encourage people to, in fact, have children. They have to consider various policies, social issues, and to take into account parenthood and childcare and childhood. If these are taken on board as policies, this will improve the situation. I think we also have to look at and consider what is happening in some countries. It might spread out to other countries. We are in the position today to make some conclusions. I am married to a school teacher who teaches 8-year-olds. Many parents have in fact come across the fact that to be a parent is also a very difficult job. It is not easy at all. It means you have to work at home during the pandemic. It was complicated to deal with 2 or 3 kids at home and work at the same time. The work-life balance is something that must be a priority for business leaders, a priority for our society. And this will be key to hiring people in the future, and also to make sure these people stay on board in the organizations. In fact, well-being, work has become key to success, but also to economic success and performance of various businesses. The European Commissioner and owner of Athos, Thierry, launched a well-being program 10 years ago. We were there to support him, and various issues pertaining to quality of work life and pertaining to childhood development and early childhood development. These have been taken on board in various businesses today, and in fact, if you consider this current pandemic and crisis, it is a revolution. Teleworking means we have to juggle it with working at home and working at home with children. And this is something revolutionary. What does it mean for businesses? Will they be involved? Yes, all businesses in private or public sector will be involved. This will become a priority for businesses, for parents, for our countries. And it is important, therefore, that we focus also and support both children and parents. This in fact is important for society as well. In France, there is a huge gap between advantaged and disadvantaged children. The gap is huge. This means that all on board to contribute to the country's prosperity. Many businesses did not sit back and wait for various public policies to be put forward, such as daycare centers on premises in the business, or as flexible work hours. No, but today, especially in Western Europe, we are laggards compared to the North in issues to do with parent leave. In Norway, 18 months of parental leave is offered to couples, be it hetero or homosexual. A couple has 18 months to be there for the child in the early stages. It is true that many businesses play a very important role. Allow me to mention another important issue for us here at A Great Place to Work. The goal and purpose of the business is not just to make money and pay the shareholders. The purpose of a business or company is also to contribute to the greater public and common good of the employees. At the heart of the first 1,000 days is another concept, to reinforce the thinking in businesses and not simply focus on handing over the money to shareholders. Personally, I am pleased to see that the President of the Republic has been looking into such initiative. And this goes back to 2019. And in fact, this initiative is something we find today. There is indeed a very thorough report that has been written up. Myself, as a business leader, as a citizen, and also as a representative of Great Place to Work in France, I would like to say that these are initiatives that we fully back and support, full-heartedly. Also in businesses, since 2000, there is now a new generation of leadership. There are 45-year-olds, and in fact, all of these new business leaders focus on work-life balance and family and children. In their businesses, there are some companies you know well. there are initiatives by Mars, EYs, and other companies that have been working on these issues. Also at the insurance, AXA has also been promoting flexible hours, on-site daycare. Many initiatives have been launched in these various companies, but there is also the tech giants, companies that are very well known. Different companies in Europe who have incorporated such initiatives, and I'm sure that these initiatives will be key to attracting employees. And this fully ties in with the 1000 Days report published in France. We fully support that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Dumoulin. Thank you very much. And it was also inspiring to hear the views from the business and employers, but also the issues emerging in the context of France, which is quite in advance in a way that the government and different actors in early childhood are giving attention to the first 1000 days of a young child, which is a very determinant period for the development of children. This is my personal thinking, but also when I had my 2 children, I was in a context of work where there was a very good support for parents having young children, such as my boss immediately created the breastfeeding room in the office for me. So, but I know that it's not always the case. And as you have mentioned, Patrick, that there's lots to do to raise the awareness of the importance of the working environment and the impact that it could give to children. As we say, it takes a village to raise children. So today we have nicely pointed out the components of the village: government, employers, families, parents, community, academia. So it was a very comprehensive presentation of the issues on the main theme. Shall I move to the discussion and question and answer?
Yes, I guess Mr. Bernard Kaliki will join us later, or maybe we can organize a podcast with Mr. Kaliki later, but we will let you know. Thank you.
Good. So after 3 very inspiring interventions, I noticed that there's one common topic which came out, which is parenting. Parenting as an important contribution, but also this is an area where it could possibly create inequality depending on how parents are supported and how parents support their own children. So my question, and it's quite a general question, and anybody among the 3 speakers who are interested in responding, please jump in or raise your hand. How do you think government and other actors like early childhood education institutions, civil societies, business community, how can they know the practices that parents can introduce which are conducive to child development? Of course, we are all experts in this area and we read, we know about the research, and we know somehow, not fully, the good practices that parents could introduce in their families. But how we could make sure and who should act so that in all families, parents are well informed and also well supported to do a practice which could genuinely contribute to the development of children. So if you could think about this question and give some examples or advice from your area of expertise, that could be a great kickoff point of the discussion. So who would like to start?
Maybe I can start. Peut-être je peux commencer. Je voulais laisser la parole à Madame Holland.
Maybe I can start. I wanted to let Mrs. Holland speak. I thought that what she said on training was fascinating. You mentioned training educators, early childhood educators, but not just early childhood educators as being fundamental. And for the families at government level, this needs to be factored in with maybe an extra stress on the 1,000 first days. The second comment I'd like to make, and this might make you smile in France, Europe and around the world, when I travel, I often see many cartoons for children that aren't always interesting. But on TV, in these cartoons, no one speaks directly to children or to parents, actually to explain what kind of best practice they could be using at home, or they could use as a source of inspiration.
Thank you very much for the reflection. And that's true. The training plays an important role, but actually parenting is the area where there's no school. Actually, there's no school for parents. There's no diploma to be a parent. Anybody can become parents. So in that, I would say, vacuum of structured support, how we could best do to help parents. Anne, would you like to say something?
Yes, look, this is a very complex question that you pose, Yuri. You know, what we have seen in research that is being done in Australia, that for many families, many parents have the view that they should just do what their own parents did, that somehow parenting is natural. If you love your child, then it will all work out very well. So there is, as I was trying to explain, we have to be very careful how we talk about this so that we don't push parents away and they reject our messages. We need to be able to invite them in. And I think that that's where settings like the early childhood centres can be community hubs. They are designed with local members of the community, and they fit with the culture of the people in that local area. They become inviting places where you don't just get early childhood education, but you get health services and family support services. In Australia, we see some of these, we call them child and family centres. Some of them, they give food, free food to families who are poor. You know, so there are things available for families that make them want to come, and then they make friends and they build connections between adults, and it's a safe place for everybody. And it's within that environment that you can start to very quietly build knowledge about from science. Now we know so much more about brain development, for example. We know that there are things that children need in those early years of life that we didn't know before. And so all of us as parents can benefit from that knowledge. But for those parents who come particularly from backgrounds of disadvantage, it's often they can push back on that for fear, they have many fears about engaging. And so you've got to make these centres very, very welcoming, very culturally sensitive. And of course, somewhere like Australia, you may be surprised to hear that more than 50% of our population are like me. They have either been born somewhere else or they have a parent born somewhere else. I was born in Finland, so I am Finnish Australian. But more than 50% of our country has a background from somewhere else. And so we need to really be very careful to tap into the culture of the parent and the family that they come from, and to make the services be a good fit. And the only way we can do that is by listening and hearing what it is that family, we have to be better at listening rather than telling them what they should do or what the services that are that they should get. We need to be asking them more and listening.
Great, that's true. When we would like to work with parents, it's really first important to have a safe space for them and a place where parents can feel trust and learn something to equip themselves. But also it comes again, the importance of cultural sensitivity. And you have mentioned that. George also has included in his initial comments on that point. We talk about international collaboration, but without forgetting the importance of the context and the cultural specificity. It's not only about country's culture. Each family, each parent and child has their own context and specificity. So the key could be how people and institutions around them could be sensitive to. And you probably raised the keyword listening, how we can listen to them to better understand their needs and their context so that we could discuss the best options or best possible support that we can think of. I wonder, George, if you have any additional comment?
Je pense que le commentaire de la contextualisation, le fait d'avoir une sensibilité à l'égard des familles, je pense que c'est...
Yes, well, I think the issue of context is, of being sensitive to families' context, is fundamental. The way to reach out to the family depends on what that family looks like. And my research and our research center, we try to reach out to the most underprivileged families. One of the observations is that often these are families whose parents do not tend to trust authorities or the people who should be there to help them. And that's why it makes it so hard to reach out to them. So what we try to do is to reach out our hands, even though it means we might be rejected over and over again. We try to reach out and get to these families, and we make ourselves available. We set up different programs, and we try to be there and to listen to these programs. Because an effective prevention program, research-wise, is a program that targets the most vulnerable families and that is patient with these families, that gradually builds a relationship with the family, just as we want these parents to be building their relationship with their own children. And there is something else that has to do with empathy, with kindness. We need these programs to be scientific, but we need to have a genuine concern to the people who we try to support and reach out to. Thank you very much. Indeed, the research and the assessment of these programs provide many answers to the question of best practices and the most effective practices. At the same time, it is our responsibility to translate this research and this science into a key message for practitioners. I believe that having this summit provides a specific contribution. It can connect research-based knowledge to discussions and decisions that have to do with practices on the ground. Natalie, you are today's co-facilitator, but I know that you are also an expert in this field, and I would like to know if you might want to contribute to this discussion or ask another question, maybe?
Merci Yuri. Je voulais juste ajouter la
Thank you,
référence
Yuri.
au livre de Georges Tarabulsi sur les 50
I
dernières
just
années de
wanted to reference
sur le développement
to
de
George Tarabulsi's
l'enfant
book
et
on the last 50 years of research on childhood,
quelques clés
on childhood development, especially the first years of childhood, which provides interesting insight to how we can assist the parents and families to the best of our abilities as professionals. And what George is saying, acting as a facilitator, not someone who knows, it is not her child, it is the parent's child. To provide the support where the family is at is fundamental. I genuinely like the term of calling the professionals facilitators. I heard about it in Australia when I was working with Anne Hollands as an assistant and facilitators in a cottage where we provided assistance to families. I was a facilitator, meaning we were all sharing information, each and every one of us, where we stood in our culture, history, in our individual journey. We would bring all these different approaches together to update our knowledge thanks to this international science. And each of us tried to guide children in the development. That was a genuine landmark in my career. And assisting professionals and parents, this concept of facilitating, I think this needs to be complemented by the fact that when you reach out to the most vulnerable families, it has to be peer-to-peer learning. It has to be equal footing. And there is nothing better for trust than having a parent from that neighborhood who will go and reach out to a family going through hardships because she lived close by. It's more familiar with the context and will take the parents to the mother-baby groups. It is a very smooth and soft guidance. All mothers who give birth in Australia join these groups and stay in the mother-baby groups for a year. Fathers are welcome too. They are assisted by facilitators. And often their peers invite them to join these groups. And that's how they eventually gain trust. That's something you need to experience. Once you have, it is deeply ingrained and allows one to become very modest. Thank you, Yuri, for allowing me to make these connections between
Thank you very much, Natalie, for
Anne and
your
George.
sharing. We might receive questions from participants, but while waiting for that, I would like to throw another dimensions, but related to the discussion so far. I would like to ask questions about the context of digital technologies. In the context of, for example, COVID pandemics and the following period, we have been talking a lot about the potentials, but also the risks and the risks of technologies. So my question is, what would be the implication of digital environment in the issues related to the issues that you have already raised? For example, what could be the potential benefit of digital technologies to enhance parent-child relationship, for example? Are there benefits? Are there also risks? We know that they are both. Or what could be the implication of technologies in child-parent relationship and in the context of working environment of parents? Does technology facilitate work-life balance for the benefit of children, or do you see more risks? So any reflection on this dimension of technology related to child development could be a timely discussion. So I wonder if this question sounds your bell of interest. Yes, Anne, please.
Well, yes, this is a big discussion now, of course, with the pandemic, and we've all learned how to use technology for a useful way for working, and so benefits, of course, and research on what it's meant for parents and children to have more time together, because the parents are working at home and they don't have to travel to their workplace. So they're saving a lot of time that they would otherwise be away from their families. So there are massive benefits, I think, to having those flexible working conditions, which I think will stay beyond COVID-19. We will not be working back in the office 5 days a week anymore. And this is a very, very big thing for parents and their children to be able to spend more time together. Of course, with anything, there are negative sides. And I think I would just say one thing about that I think it's not the technology that is the demon here or the danger. It is it's how it's used. And as I said in my remarks earlier, learning and development in young children happens in a relationship. It's always in the relationship. And so if the technology can be used together in a relationship, then that just is an extension of that learning that we know is a relational context. So there are many, I do this with I have 2 little grandchildren now, 2 and 4, and we use technology together, and we discuss it, and or we speak to each other. If we can't be together, we speak and we connect via technology, and these are fantastic things. But if you leave a child alone with a device, left alone with a device, obviously that is taking them out of the relationship with their parents, and it removes that opportunity for relational learning and development.
Great, thank you very much. Especially it highlighted the importance to think about how it is used. Yes, Patrick, I saw your hand.
Yes, Patrick, I saw your hand. I would like to echo what Anne Hollins said. The danger is not the technology, it lies in the way we use it. If we didn't have this technology, how would we face this crisis? The world could have come to a standstill. We are heading to a digital world, and people have access to the technology in homes now. Thanks to that technology, there will be an impact on the climate. People will no longer have to take the plane to go somewhere. Meetings, for instance. Myself, I have experienced that. Many meetings will happen in the digital world now. It is important. Other matters. Abusive use of technology with the respect of being at work. Often managers don't trust their teams and are having too much digital pressure. That's when we have problems. Once trust is there and people trust each other, everything is based on trust, then things will improve.
Great, that's also another very important point. It is how we master and control the use of technologies for the sake of the well-being, and we shouldn't be over by the abusive use of technology. Any other thoughts, if you have?
Peut-être si je peux m'exprimer. Oui, est-ce que c'est possible pour moi de m'exprimer? Oui. Il y a deux éléments.
Yes, I can speak. Can I take the floor? I'd like to say two things. So I don't want to sound like an alarm when we refer to technology, but there is something new. I can agree it can certainly better assist us, the technology, and better managing our schedules. And certainly there are advantages in these technologies. It is also a good thing for parents. And this enables parents to spend more time with their children thanks to technology. However, there is something else I would like to refer to, the development processes. If we acknowledge the human being is a social being and social contacts and relation is important to others, and technology provides us with access to such relationships, and that can be done easily, then it is possible that for some parents it might also be too easy, and that some parents might in fact neglect their children. For instance, if the parent is sitting with the baby and feeding the baby with the bottle and is scrolling their phone. Now, there are new devices that have come on the market, which is in fact a device that will hold a baby bottle or a stroller. There is a special support so that the parent can scroll her text when walking with the child in the stroller. There is distraction. There are other issues as well. Instead of having the child working on establishing a relationship with the parents, it is easier for the child, therefore, to establish a relationship, and it will be easier to do that through technology. So there is a problem. I don't want to worry people here. However, research has been undertaken in this area to demonstrate that there is a potential for an important risk. This can, in fact, disrupt certain processes, interrelational processes between the child and the parent. So we have to be very, very careful.
Great, thank you very much. I really take a lesson out of these interventions that technologies could be a potential inputs to amplify or reinforce the good practices to enhance, for example, the parent-child relationship or children's development. But if it's not intelligently used and designed, it could potentially be disruption or even risk for children. So what we need to know is we need to know where we could potentially bring technologies to strengthen the desired effect that we wanted to have. For example, I know from the OECD study is that parents' involvement in the matters of early childhood centers could make a difference, especially for disadvantaged children. Then technologies could be used to facilitate parents to better connect and better communicate with, for example, kindergarten teachers, or everybody said the importance of conversation, contact, relationship between parents and children. And we can think about a good and creative way to use digital technologies to support that, but not necessarily replace the healthy and sound relationship which could help children. So I see that time is up. I would like to close the conversation session. Natalie, do you have any final words before moving to the next section?
Merci, tout va bien.
Good. So from my side, I would like to very much thank you, all the three speakers, for your sharing. But also, it was a great forum to put together the perspectives of you experts working in different, from different angles, but with the same and common purpose of promoting the early childhood education and care. Thank you very much, and over to you, Nathalie.
Merci beaucoup, Yuri. Juste préciser que nous mettrons en lien
Thank you very much,
l'ensemble des
Yuri.
publications de l'OCDE qui sont
Simply
reliées
to say
à
this,
ce sujet,
we
mais aussi
will
les
add
ouvrages,
links to all of the publications from the OECD, but links also to various publications, for instance, the publications from George Tarabulsi, different research undertaken by himself on this issue, but also there is another publication, the publication on parenthood in companies, for instance, and these are indeed important issues, especially in this day and age when we are as these publications highlight different ideas that are important to share. I would now like to carry on with our journey of 1,000 days. I would like to talk about the report that was handed over to the French government recently. It has to do with early interventions in early childhood education. It is all about developments at an early age, and so now I would like to invite you to join me on the platform, and I would like to suggest we go on this journey together. So perhaps, if you don't mind, we could start by looking at the platform, or later on as you wish. Here we are on the platform, and as you can see, somewhere between Anne Hollands and the opera, the Eiffel Tower. Further down the road, what will be on the platform as well, you'll see several screens and monitors. This is the International Village. There are various initiatives throughout the world. You'll see the different countries and flags. You can go between the monitors and look into them. You can choose the language of your choice, and I would like to welcome you on board. There is a team of specialists and experts with us, authors, co-creators of this journey. We are all very pleased to welcome you on board. So behind all of this, on the platform, there is a journey. This journey talks about early childhood development, brain development issues. This, in fact, is the very first stop, the first area. And this is all about social neuroscience. It has to do with about welcoming emotions and the capacity to understand how to support and welcome such emotions, and also daily support provided to children to make sure that there is a proper foundation for children. In the next stop or area, we then deal with privacy issues, protecting privacy. You have a video that talks about care. And the next stop pertains to the third stop, which has to do with food and nutrition, different practices. This is in keeping with the latest scientific research. Breastfeeding, nutritional needs. and also any deficiencies and various measures, protective measures that can be taken. Today's practices are in direct link to the future generations. What we do today on a day-to-day basis is important and expresses itself in future generation genes. It is very important to focus on the quality of a child's environment. And now it is nighttime, time to think about sleep and how to see how important sleep is to children and to child development. And in fact, as I leave this nighttime, we now look at play. This, once again, is a very precious tool. It is a way for children to establish links and relationships with others, explore the world around him or her, and understand the world. And at the very end, podcasts designed for change. In this podcast, it is all about the boy and looking at the world, both locally and internationally. The second video brings us to look at depression. There is a doctor who explains that the early intervention is very important in this case. And finally, a third video which has to do with childcare structures and services at municipal level. If you go back to the right, there are two other videos, two exceptional videos, which have to do with a journey expressed in images. And this is work and research undertaken by the Center at the University of Harvard. One part actually has to do with child constructs, and especially executive functions, for instance. And our third level has to do with risk factors and factors that have to do with protection, to find a balance between risks and what to do to protect yourselves from those risks. This is important. This is something that we can implement and work with at all levels. Caregivers, professionals, or anybody who has to interact with children. I'm sure that you'll be eager to share these factors, risk factors, and factors for protecting. These are complementary in nature. I'd like to thank you all for taking part in this visit. We are looking forward to renewing such experience as often as possible. We will follow through. I will give the floor now to Didier, who will provide the closing remarks. Thank you very much.